Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As always, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys so much for all the support, all of the messages, all the things that you've sent to me, all the things that you've sent to the show. I love hearing from you guys, love hearing the comments that you have, the questions that you got, the things that you want to hear me talk about with guests. So keep all of that coming. And again, thank you so much for checking this out. And we're going to dive right in with one of my favorite topics, which all of you who are any listeners of any length know, as I love talking about defense, and I'm so excited to be able to talk about pressure defense, talk about pressing, talking about, as the title of this episode says, causing havoc on defense. We're going to get into a few different elements of that word and a few different elements of what that looks like. We'll talk about, with my guest, his defensive philosophy. We'll talk about the concept of, buying in and loving to play defense, as well as things that, my guest works on in practices, specifically talking things about the press and also, of course, defensive discipline, which I know is something that I've had conversations with a few of you listeners about, is the concept of having discipline when you want to, speed teams up and put a lot of pressure on the ball or press a team to make sure that you're playing it well and not fouling or not making reckless mistakes. So we're going to hit on all of that, I'm sure a lot more. So without further ado, we're going to be joined by my guest, who is the head coach at St. Joe High School out in South Bend, Indiana. Very happy to be joined today by Coach Coach Gaff. Coach, again, really happy I'm able to have you on here today. How are things going?
It's going well. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to be here and excited to get better talking with you.
Coach, let's get into your basketball journey and your coaching journey. I know that there's been a lot of recent success, which is really awesome, and I know we'll touch on that. But let's talk about your basketball journey and coaching journey. Talk about where the game of basketball has taken you, and ultimately how'd you end up at St. Joe's?
Yeah. I think I have a pretty standard Indiana basketball story. Grew up playing basketball. Grew up with a dad who was a basketball coach, coached girls basketball for a long time. So spent a lot of my early childhood in gyms, watching practices and shooting on the side hoops, and then um, was a solid high school player. Was able to get scholarship to go play ball at an NAI school called Grace College, and had a pretty good career there. And just continued to fall in love with the game of basketball and all the aspects of it. Um, and had a good career, and that kind of got me a chance to play overseas. Played overseas for a while, and then was signed, sealed, delivered. I'm like, I'm going to coach. Like, I love it. I don't want to give up the game. And got done playing, came back, and my college coach was like, "Hey, you wanted to be like a high school teacher?" I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I know a guy that's looking for an assistant in South Bend. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Sure." And so my hometown's not too far from South Bend. It's only about 30, 40 minutes away. So interviewed with the coach and really liked it. He was kind of a legendary coach. I think he's retired now, but I think he kind of came close to like the 400 win mark in high school, and was able to learn underneath him. Was an assistant with him for 2 years, and then I took over, and I'm going into my 5th year as a head coach here at St. Joe, and loving the journey and love getting better.
Awesome. I wanted to start, Coach, with something that I know you're really passionate about, which is player development. So I'm gonna jump right into that aspect of it. So, talk us through some of the aspects of player development that you are particularly passionate about, and then also with those, how do you kind of go about teaching them as well?
Sure. Um, yeah, I love watching guys, hit their goals and reach their dreams. And so no better way to do that than to get them better and kind of develop them. So we kind of take the approach here. It's kind of a buzzword, I guess, or I don't know, but the holistic approach. We want holistic players. So one of the things we do in the summer that drives us insane, but we see a lot of benefit from is number one, we let our guys just play free, and
Mm-hmm.
we try not to get involved. We let them pick teams. I try not to talk a whole bunch, and kind of let them figure it out. So it's ugly basketball for a lot of June. But I think one of the biggest problems that, our players face is they don't play the game enough. I think they train a ton, but I don't think they play enough. And
Mm.
so just letting them play and figure out, well, this move that I've been working on for 3 months isn't actually really working in live play, and let's get rid of that. And then through that, three things we try and really get after our guys about is understanding the game, so making the right reads, whether you're on offense or defense, which we'll talk about defense today. So there's a lot of reads on defense, I think. Um, and then we want our guys to, be able to use the right tool at the right time. And so when I first started coaching, I'd see these kids coming in with like phenomenal. You watch them with like these great, bags. They could
Hmm.
17 different dribbling moves, and
A
then
lot of combinations. Yeah.
you go like, yeah, that's cool and all, but it's not really working in real games. So like, how can we use the right tools? So one of the things we see a lot is like guys will shoot it when they should have passed it, or driven the ball, or they drive it when they should have shot it. And so we use film a lot, or using it more. That's one area that I'm getting better at, to show like, hey, like what's the right read here? Um, and then finding ways to make fundamentals fun. I know coaches always say you got to fall in love with the boring and all that. And that's true, you do, but like if we can make it a little bit better, then we try and do that. So we try and make everything competitive, even when we're working on our ball handling, or if we're working on free throws or catch and shoot. We try and keep track of makes. We try and keep track of everyone, so you can kind of go against other guys in the gym. And we think competition always breeds better ball players. So it's kind of a overview of everything, and it's kind of how we go about it here.
So when you are, having your guys, play more, like you said, that they train a lot, but maybe they don't play basketball as much. For you, since I think you mentioned that you're kind of observing the process, you're not trying to interject a whole bunch. What is it that you have found that guys kind of figure out by playing? Is it like you said, like they figure out things that maybe like aren't working that they're working on if they're a trainer, or they're things that like they are picking up on in terms of like their basketball IQ, or what do you kind of see as their kind of development by allowing them just the opportunity to just kind of play out more and just kind of see what works and what doesn't?
I think, the great thing about athletics and specifically basketball is when players come in with whatever, move that they think is makes them special and it doesn't work. The other guys on the floor are not shy about telling them, because they want to, like, if they're on the same team, they want to win. If you keep doing the same stupid thing, like they're going to let you know. And and we even have like, one of our point guard is pretty dang good. He had a kid on his team and he came over. He's like, "Can I get this kid off my team?" I said, "Yeah, of course." He kicks the kid off the team. The kid came out. He goes, "Well, why am I not on the team?" I go, "Well, what do you think?" And having him like answer that question helped him get to the realization like he doesn't care about defense. And if you don't care about defense, well, the guys don't want to play with you, because
Mm,
defense is what's getting us wins. And so letting kids kind of get to that understanding. And then I think it helps with the IQ side of things. Um, Gets guys making more reads. I think guys make more reads in live play, and there's more, you know, fluidity, if that's a word, with
right.
things happen in live play. And so as those guys figured out, then when we get into like, now we're in July, we'll spend a little bit more time kind of implementing some of our course principles. They can go back and go, oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. I did that. So like as we get
Mm.
new guys coming in, or our older guys who are getting new roles, they go, yeah, 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 I did that. I saw that. Okay, I'm in. I'm in. Um, and then it helps, I think, promote leadership, because I'm not going to get in and yell at a guy in June. I'm just not going to yell. So when our players are all of a sudden taking control, and I think, player-led gyms are always the most successful gyms.
Yeah, it's something too where I think like the lesson that a player learns from being able to kind of figure it out themselves and go through the process of what works and what doesn't. at least in my experience, and I feel like you're kind of the same way, that sticks a lot more with a player than them trying to recall something that like a coach told them or a coach said to them. If they firsthand went through that experience and had to kind of work through it themselves, or use their teammates to kind of help them understand, like, oh, this move really worked, or this is what needs to be happening defensively, or this is the read I need to make correctly. If they go through it for the process of playing, I feel like that lesson sticks with them a lot longer than if they were just told it by somebody else.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think, even though when I look back on my own career, I'm like, I always listen to my coach. But even now, like, we've been pretty successful the past couple of years here. Even now when I say like the stuff we ask our guys to do is pretty crazy. Like we're trying to press the entire game. We're trying to pressure the ball, for 32 minutes. Um, Heck, I'm trying to get them to press off misses too. So, it's pretty wild to ask guys to do that. So when they figured out in live play on their own, it makes it easier for me to sell that concept. That hey, if you pressure the ball, good things will happen, right? Good things are going to happen.
Hmm.
Whereas if I stand in the gym and harp on them, it's more of a, they're like, I don't know, coach, like you don't look like you were very fast, so no way you did this, which is
Yeah.
right, but
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Let's jump into that, coach. Let's jump into the concept of causing havoc on defense. So, kind of talk us through the development of kind of your defensive philosophy. What is your defensive philosophy, and how did this philosophy about playing defense kind of become your identity as a coach?
yeah. So I've always liked pressure defense. Um, and then it's a scary thing to do because in high school, you might have three really great athletic guys, and then you might have two really skilled guys, and you might have one guy that's not either of those, but he's a big guy or, whatever. And so to do that, you're really putting yourself out there. And if it doesn't go well, it looks bad.
Hmm.
And I can send you some film from my first couple of years where you go like, oh my gosh, these guys are terrible. But you could start to see, early on. I wish I would have bought into it more myself. I think it would have been better, faster. But simply put, our philosophy is make the game uncomfortable. I think uncomfortable players make poor decisions, and um, I also don't believe teams practice at the level that we do. Right? Like we're not going to go for 3 hours or 2 hours, but we're going to be 90 minutes of intense up and down practice. Don't think a lot of teams do that, and I think that's where we can gain an advantage. So watching, our team get pressed and see us making silly turnovers, going, why the heck are we turning it over? Kind of getting me like, look, we're long, we're athletic. It's dumb for me not to use that to the best of our advantage. Let's get out and press and let's see what happens. And so, going on that journey of looking for other coaches that do it. You know, finding Tobin Anderson, you know, obviously knocked off Purdue with that massive upset. Hurts me as a Big Ten guy, Purdue guy here in Indiana, but seeing that change up in pressure hurting Purdue was like, all right, if they can take down Goliath, maybe we can too. So that's when I finally bought into it, and we've been kind of running with it ever since.
So once you have the philosophy down, kind of talk us through now, because I know you said you're a pressure guy, and you mentioned how you'd ideally be pressing the whole game. So talk about kind of the building blocks. What was the process of kind of building up, um, not only your press but also like your half court defense? Kind of what was the installation process from the philosophy of what you wanted to do to start building it actually on the court?
Yeah, so I'll give a disclaimer. If you are interested in doing this, just know that it's going to be rough and you're going to probably give up some easy layups and open threes early in every game. But in the long term, you win. So if you can get your head around that, it's fun. So we started building it in the one-on-one. So we go one-on-one full court. We start every day one-on-one full court. We keep the guys in the outer third of the court. And defense's job has to be a contested catch. And then you have to make them work and pin them to the sideline. We don't want the ball to come back to the middle in 1 versus 1. And that's kind of the start. And then you always must have contact with the player. So, early on when we first started doing it, we fouled a lot because
Mm,
not a lot of teams in our area do that. So I think referees had to adjust. And then two, we were hacking for sure. So I mean, they were fouls. But as we continue to do it, continue to get better at it, you have two kind of lines of logic. One, if everything's a foul, nothing's a foul, which plays out. Or two, we got really good at kind of the hot stove concept, which I'm sure you've talked about or heard. You know, you can make contact just like it's a hot stove, though. Be quick. And so if
yeah,
you can
yeah.
do that, pretty good. So we start one-on-one, full court, and it's competitive. Offensive scores, defense, you owe me something. You know, if defense stops offense, offense, you owe me something. So it's always competitive. Um, and then we build from there. And then we, go two versus two, three versus three, four versus four, five versus five. Um, and when you get two versus two, we work on our gaps. So main guy on the ball, secondary defender has to be over. And one of the big rules, you cannot get split on defense. You can never get the ball, can never get between two St. Joe defenders. So it's just every day building up, every day, every day. And if we practice for 90 minutes, 70 minutes are always working on our pressure, our full court press, because if you don't, it's not going to be as good as you want it to be. Try
Was
not to be
this
too wordy.
Oh, I was going to ask about the kind of the trial and error of kind of figuring this out about how much time you needed to, dedicate to pressure in a practice setting. So, as you kind of think back to, and I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but this is a good time to talk about practice and implementation anyway. As you kind of think about how your approach was to installing your defense when you first started to now, what has kind of shifted? What has kind of changed as you've kind of refined and started to really lock in on how to really get your pressure the way that you want it to be?
Number one would be coaching buy-in. I think it's
Hmm.
scary to do as a coach. And so when I first started doing it, we practiced 90 minutes. I'd spend 25 to 30 minutes on it. And then you're always worried about your offense. I got to do better on offense, got to do better on offense. Um, and so then you're out there pressing the game, like, we're not really getting the deflections we wanted. We're not getting steals. And so, I'd get angry with my players. And then, you kind of have to go back and look at yourself and go, well, I'm not putting a lot of time into it. How can I expect them to get in shape, which is one of the hardest things to do is to get guys in shape. And then B, get them to buy into it if you're not going to put an immense amount of effort into it in your practices. So that was like one of the first really hard lessons I learned is changing my practice form and going like, hey, look, we're going to do everything through our defense, and that's going to be the primary basis of our practices. It drives my assistants nuts. My players will get frustrated at times because I won't spend time on, you know, plays. I won't spend a lot of time on our out of bounds unders because I go, look, those are a very small portion of our game. The majority of our game is going to be played in transition, right? Like it's like what 70% of a game is transitioning from offense to defense or defense to offense. So why not get great at that? And so after the coaches get bought in, then the bigger task is getting players to buy in because it's not easy to do. It's very difficult. And so the first 2 years it was tough. There's a little bit of pushback from the players because they didn't see the immediate outcome. And so
Hmm.
you have some seniors that are like, "Hey, this is my last go around, and you're making me run sprints, in February. Like we've never done that before." So once we got through those kind of two big hurdles, coaching buy-in and player buy-in, then that's when you really start to see it pay off.
When you are talking about your defensive pressure, are you talking like full court, run and jump, a specific zone press? What are you kind of talking about in terms of a defensive pressure, in terms of like set,
Sure.
other teams taking it, baseline out of bounds sort of situation, that set sort of situation? What sort of full court defense are you running?
So we run a man-to-man full court press. Um, we call it white, and I know it's very complicated. It's one of our base colors. And so white's man to man. Every made basket, we're in white. And every single dead ball, we will be in white, no matter what. We do have where we need to change it up. There are some really good teams in Indiana, so sometimes you got to change it up. We go to a 1-2-2 zone press that we call blue. It's like we stole from Villanova. So if you've ever seen them, you know what we're doing. But our primary, meat and potatoes is a man-to-man press where we're looking for traps off the inbounds. So to go quick, if you're guarding the ball out of bounds, you should probably get a warning from a referee from being too close to the baseline. And then your job is to get a tip. You got tip the pass, or you have to make it a high slow pass or a low slow bounce pass. That's a non-negotiable. You have to do that. And if you don't, you're going to sit next to me. Our next line, so our next two guys, their job is to force a contested catch, and the ball and player can never get behind them. So we teach them kind of like a football defensive back. Get in a player's hip, ride them into those corners, and if they try and run back, you run back with them. That's okay. If they want to run away from the ball, then you run away from the ball. The back row, if the ball is inbounded, the back row is not allowed to come up. If your back row runs up, you're going to get burned pretty bad. So back row has to stay back and protect the basket, and then their biggest job is communication. And that's probably one of the harder things to actually get players to do is to communicate at a high level. So that's like a crash course in what we're doing. If the ball dribbles to the middle, we do a run and jump. So the middle defender will jump the ball. The primary defender that was on the ball peels out to the other side of the court, and everyone rotates behind. If that makes any kind of sense.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, definitely. So let's talk about one of the things that you've emphasized a couple times here. So what are the teaching points or what are the things that you're emphasizing or having your guys kind of um perfect, I guess, for lack of a better word, when it comes to trapping? So I know you mentioned about I absolutely can't get split, but what are the other teaching points that go into a good trap out of a pressure defense?
Sure. So we harp obviously don't get split, and then angles. The times that we get burned the worst is when we take bad angles to the trap. So the guy that's taking, guarding the ball to bounce, he runs in like a straight diagonal line to the ball, which just leaves too big of a gap. So we have to kind of teach them to like essentially take two big steps back after the inbounds and then make it like a 90-degree turn and then into the ball. The next thing is the on-ball defender. You got to get the guy to put his eyes down. So you have to pressure him so much that he puts his eyes down or he leans back. So if a player's not doing either of those two things, we can't trap. So we tell guys if the player is looking at you with the ball, you can't trap him because he sees you coming and he'll make a good play. And so then your job is to stunt and stand in the lane. So he can't dribble by you and he has to make a hard pass around you. So you got to give your players a lot of bandwidth
Hmm.
because there's a little bit of freedom in this. And so again, early on, you're probably going to give up some bad plays and it's going to look a little rough and you're going to have an assistant coach telling you to get out of the press. But stay with it and players wear down, our guys won't. And then guys they just figure it out. They kind of figure it out as they go, even in the season. So each month we just get better and better. And obviously, the goal is always to be at your best in March.
So the errors that you're gonna be having to overcome, or the things that you're gonna see the mistakes are made, I imagine are, you said, kind of bad angles, or maybe some errors in terms of like anticipation, or not getting the ball handler to put their eyes down, or lean back. Are those going to be kind of those common things that are gonna be have to work through at the beginning?
Yeah, so we call them, and I stole this as I steal everything. We call it fake hustle. So it looks good, like your parents are going to love you for it. Like you go sprinting by and almost tip the pass, but then your player's got a, full court drive to the rim unguarded. Or you're you're making you're having ball pressure, but you're not really pressuring the ball. Like you're in the area, your hand might be on their chest or on their hip, but you're not chest to chest with them, or you're not communicating. We call that fake hustle because it looks good from the stands, but it's not real hustle. It's not real relentlessness. And so that's one of the bigger things to teach, because it's an easy out, right? It's easy to like look like you're really pressuring the ball and you can fake it. I do it in practice all the time. Um, but to really do it, it's a really, really relentless effort you have to have. So that's one of the first big hurdles we jump. And then the next one is teaching angles and teaching like when to go. Um, if you're in the passing lane, you'd be shocked how many guys like just misread the angle of the ball. Like I still am shocked by that. Like, how did you not see that angle?
See the angle?
So
Yeah.
teaching the angles, which we use film for that a lot and kind of point it out on film, that's kind of giving us our best. And then just repping the heck out of it and pressing all day, every day. That's our one only rule that we have when we play in June. You got to press the ball full court. That's the only rule we play with. Outside of that, you can do whatever you want. So um, that's probably the two biggest things we do. And then the one that gets me in the background that you kind of forget about is the back row of your press, is the communication aspect. And because they're in the back, they think it's a break and they don't have to do as much.
Oh,
And so
they're seeing
teaching
everything
them,
though.
yeah, right. Like you see it all. Like you're the play caller, you're the shot caller, you're air traffic control. You got to be barking. So, that's meant like we took off one of our better defenders that was on ball defender, but he's a good communicator. So we took him and put him in the back and then put a player up that wasn't as good at on ball defending, but wasn't a great communicator. And so, kind of freaked you out a little bit, but in the long term, we got really, really good response from it because the communication stepped up. And I think you can always make a person a better defender. You can always fix that. Communication, I think, is much harder to fix.
So what is some of the terminology? What are some of the key, I guess, vocab words? That's a good teacher word that are in uh the defensive vocabulary for a press for your team.
Yeah, so we try and keep it extremely simple because the coach is simple. If a player's going, he just yells go. Um, and if a player's peeling, he yells peel. And back row, we say everything's got to be a one-word command. If it's more than one word, it's probably not going to get through. And so they're down to one-word commands, player name and direction he has to go, and that's it. Pretty simple. We're not too fancy here, and so that's we've got. Early on, I tried to be fancy, and I had all these
This
names. I thought,
terminology and
yeah, I know this is gonna be great. And within 6 weeks, guys are going, "What was that word again?" I don't remember. It's a good question. So we
yeah.
just keep it simple.
Um, you talked about, and this is something that I kind of wanted to circle back to. I want to make sure I didn't forget this point. The concept of defensive buy-in and the fact that, as you mentioned, you're not spending a lot of time on offensive maybe offensive sets or like I said baseline out of bounds plays or things of that nature because you have such a heavy emphasis on defense. So what I wanted to ask was what is kind of the process of getting defensive buy-in. Now, obviously, I think the biggest answer is like you're not going to play the floor, you're not going to be on the floor if you're not playing defense. But what kind of goes into really getting your guys excited and bought into the level of defense that they're playing and practicing at when they're not, working on maybe some of these other things that they want to do or other coaches are saying to do? How do you kind of still keep their excitement and passion and buy-in on the defensive level up?
Yeah, early on, I did the like, if you're not gonna do it, you're gonna sit next to me. But it's hard to do when like if it's your best player who's scoring, our best player when we first started was averaging 23 points a game. So I'm going to sit the kid that's scoring 23 points a game? Probably not. So that's not going to work because then I'm for sure going to lose if I'm taking 23 points off the floor. So how do I, get that buy-in? So we went about it. We say like, hey, you're always on offense. Like, why would you ever want to play defense? If you press, you're going to get some steals. You're going to get some deflections and you're at the front of the press, which means you're going to get the steal or you're going to get the pass from the steal and get the easy dunk. And so, that was our early selling and it worked. And then there was a little bit more success, players got a little bit more excited about it. Now, have we bench guys? Yeah, we have. Um, but I prefer to do it the easy way, which I tell guys, do it the easy way. We're asking you to do something, just try it out.
Hmm.
We've been successful with it. We've gotten to 2 state championships. We've won one. It works. Let's do it. So the early on, it was tough because all of a sudden we were running heavy sprints. All of a sudden, I'm asking guys that were used to sitting in the corner shooting threes and being kind of cruising in games. All of a sudden, they're having to sprint 84 feet for 30 minutes, 29 minutes, 28 minutes. Um, and so that led me into like, all right, I have to play more guys. If I have to play more guys, those guys on the end of the bench are going to be really, really hungry because they get a little bit more time. So the nice thing about pressing is instead of, early on I was probably 6, 7 deep.
Hmm.
Now we go 8, 9,
You
and
need them.
you need them. And so all of a sudden guys are going like, oh shoot, if I play really good defense, I could get 4 points a game just being a really great defender. And then, hey, I might pick up an offensive rebound and I can hit a knockdown open shot. So, hey, I might get 8 points a game, 9 points a game, maybe 10. And we had some guys that if we didn't press probably would average 2 points a game and they averaged 8 because they're getting steals and getting tips and deflections. So, I mean, let's be real, offense sells, right? So if you can get them to say like, hey, we're always on offense, it works. So that was kind of how we sold it. And then once, you get your best player buy in, then all the other guys will fall in line. So
Fall in line. Yeah. Um, what is your kind of your philosophy, or what do you go into um out in transition? Because you talked about how you're always pressing. So off a missed shot, what is your kind of defensive philosophy? What is it you're getting into when the other team's out in transition on offense?
yeah, so hard to press a miss. I'm still trying to figure that out. I think this year we're going to try tagging up will be what we go with. Um, so I have to check back with me in a year to see if it worked. What we did last season is we would put our best defender, which would change depending on our lineup, would find the ball. Whoever go get the ball right away. So there was no free dribble up the court. And then everyone else was to get back and build a wall. And so that's what we started with. And then once we kind of got that going well, then we take our second best defender and say, your job is to get to the top of the key, like our side. We missed a shot. Your job is to get in the middle gap behind the defender and looked for traps if you can catch a trap in transition. And so that was kind of what we would do. We were good at it.
Hmm.
I think we could be better, and that's something we're going to try and get much better at this year. Um, but we would just kind of get back and build a wall, starting with on the ball, and then build that wall kind of down the center of the court, try and pin the ball onto a outer third of the court.
So in those situations where, a team it does get out in transition, you stop the initial movement. Now you're in the half court defense. What does your philosophy of causing havoc on defense look like when you are pushed into the half court set? Talk us through kind of what your half court defense is going to be looking like when you're still, obviously applying pressure and trying to cause chaos in the half court.
Yeah, so we started out as a no middle team, and then we kind of morphed into a no paint, just because I really do believe the hardest thing to do in the game of basketball is defend the ball. Um, Kids are so good at dribbling the ball and getting downhill. So we went to just no paint, ball can't get in the paint, um, figure out how to angle it away. And then same deal. Any kind of screen, we're switching, whether it's in the press, there's a player to player screen, switch it. In the half court, player to player screen, switch it. But you have to escort, there has to be contact made. So if you and I are guarding two players and there's a screen, we have to physically hand them off to each other. There can't be any gaps. If there's a gap, you can slip it. If it's a ball screen, they can shoot that and get downhill. So it's a physical handoff. Um, and then our job is there's never a free movement in half court. You're going to be made contact. So if you want to cut across lane, you're going to get a forearm. You're going to get contact or a chest. Again, we fouled a lot early on, but as we progressed, we got better with playing with our hands out and not extending our arm bars. Less fouls are called. And then again, if everything's a foul, then nothing's a foul. So it kind of always evened out in the end. And that's kind of the basic. And then we have play calls if we want to trap ball screens. We'll have calls for that. If we want to, this year we're fortunate enough we have a big kid. So we
Hmm.
have a bigger kid, so he's not as good at switching and getting out on faster guards. So he'll play. We'll steal from the NBA and play in drops with him. But primarily, it stays the same. No one can be comfortable in offense. It doesn't matter if the guy's in the corner, trying to lock down the corner for open three. if he's cutting through the lane or if he has the ball, he must be made under pressure, with physical contact, um, with communication, and then seeing players in help side.
So you brought up something that I was going to ask in a little bit, but since you brought it up, this would be a good time to ask you now. Um, what teaching points or what are things that you got to say to your guys to help them maintain their defensive discipline? Obviously, they're looking to apply a lot of pressure. They're trying to, you know, get successful traps, try to get tips, trying to get out in transition and run and with that, there's going to be some fouls. There's going to be some stuff where you can play a little bit reckless or play a little bit out of your element or try and do a little bit too much rather than, staying disciplined. So, what are kind of the teaching points or the refining that you kind of do as a coach to kind of help your guys maintain their defensive intensity while also maintaining their discipline so that they're not being overly reckless?
Yeah, so I think it's always easier to pull the reins back than try and get people to go full tilt. So we, again, in June, man, I bet we foul 100 times a game. And then we kind of pull them back. So the two main problems that we have with our program right now or with players is one, kind of back to that fake hustle, shooting passing lanes and giving up easy layups or backdoor cuts or just getting the ball in the paint, which causes us to get into rotations that we don't want to get into, um, or overly aggressive contact. So those are the two biggest things we see. I take that back. We see three things. The third thing is we have the guy guarding the ball and he's putting a heck of a lot of pressure, which we say, hey, you're probably going to get beat. And that's okay because there's going to be a guy right behind you that's going to jump that ball and
Hmm.
you can peel out of that. And when there's not a guy there, which happens, where the guy gets caught staring at his man. And so a guy gets
Right, right.
beat, wide open layup. No one wants to look bad. And so then you get that tension, hey, you didn't do your job. And that kid's mad that he's getting called out and they kind of get after each other. So those are probably the three biggest things we deal with. With the shooting the passing lanes, our biggest thing is if we can film it, we do, and we show the film, which, I can think of two guys on off the top of my head that do it all the time. And so we just show them film continuously, like, hey, like you never had a chance. So I guess, a question back at you is what do you do? Do you take that kid away who's playing really aggressive, who will get you a couple of tip passes, who'll get you maybe 1, 2 steals a game, but might give up a couple bad plays and try and rein him back in? Or do you kind of roll the dice and say, hey, we're in Vegas. Let's see how it goes. Last year I lived in Vegas. Was like, hey, let's roll it. I think our rotation will be all right. You only will get subbed out if you don't sprint back into the play. If you go for a steal, you don't get it, but you didn't sprint back to cover up and help out, then you're subbing out. And so if your effort's bad, that's what we're going to come for. So that's what we did with the over aggressive contact. Hey, we're still working on it. All right. Still have some problems. We have a couple guys that are foul prone. Biggest thing is teaching. It's mainly in the post. We're not great at guarding post players. We're not the tallest team rolling around. We're all kind of around 6'2" to 6'5". And we're playing teams that have some 6'7" to 6'10" guys. And so we front the post. But guys, I'm a big guy. I was a big guy back in the day. And so try and it's mainly teaching points. Like you never want to get engaged with someone bigger than you. So you always want to keep a little bit of distance from you. And then the hot stove thing comes into it. And then rotations is we do a lot of small-sided games for rotations to make sure that we are in the help side so that when the on-ball defender gets beat, we probably spend, if we're spending 70 minutes on our press, of that 70 minutes, we're transitioning into a small-sided game that works on our half court. And then the last 20 minutes is working in our half court defense into our full court press and then mixing offense in with all of it.
What's kind of the makeup of your small-sided games? I know everything is competitive. Are you putting like certain restrictions? Are you having like certain actions that like are required in them? I know everybody kind of has a different approach to small-sided games. So what's kind of your philosophy or what is your kind of approach as your guys are doing them?
So again, we always want to compete. So it's always two teams are going at it. Um, and so we do teach offense and defense together. And so, I typically stick with defense because you gotta kind of be a jerk to teach defense, especially the way we play. So I make sure I'm the jerk. And then my assistants will take the offensive side of the ball. But the primary offensive games we play, um, we do one where, we have one on one side of the court, and then we'll have, you know, it'll end up being a 3-on-3 drill or 4-on-4 drill. But the starts in a one-on-one, and we put the defense at a bad disadvantage. And so offensively, we're looking to read the defense and make the right play, whether it's get to the rim, whether it's, kick it out or spray it out, or whatever the kids are saying these days, for shots. On the flip side, defense, your job is to run through the ball, not demand the ball, and try and get tips, and then make sure the rotation is there. So spend a lot of time teaching rotation, low man, working on the X out when a man does go and have to stop the ball. That primary defender has to X out with the other guy, so the communication aspect. And then we try and get those games into full court as much as possible. So we
Mm.
do a lot of 3-on-3 in the full court, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I've been there too. Your practice structure is how does it change from beginning, middle to the end of the season? For somebody who has such an emphasis on defense and the intensity that I know that your practices are run at, how do you kind of balance practice planning and what it needs to look like in the beginning or the middle of the year versus how it's going to look like at the end of the year? How do you kind of balance the intensity and making sure you're getting everything you want out of a practice while at the same time, you know, being aware of, it's a long season and your guys have been going hard for a few months. How have you kind of balanced that?
Um, One, you got to give a little bit of say to your players. So sometimes the players are like, "Coach, man, we need one." Understood. And sometimes we don't practice on Saturdays, even though we play on Tuesday and or whatever. So the first, we start November. We're probably practicing 2 hours, right at 2 hours. Um, by the time we hit December, we're 90 minutes. January is probably 90 minutes. February is probably dropping down closer to an hour. And if we're in March, we're not going much past an hour, if even getting to an hour. So the intensity always still stays the same. The length of practice gets shortened, and then the number of practices. So sometimes we take days off. Sometimes they're like, well, you got a game coming up, you probably should practice. Yeah, yeah, we'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Fresh minds, fresh bodies are always better. So that's the biggest thing, and it freaks you out as a coach because you go like, hey, we do really need to work on our out of bounds, but you go like,
Yeah, yeah. Situational stuff, all these other things.
yeah, and you just kind of go, well, you know what? Like, hey, we said we're only going 60 minutes. It's 60 minutes. We're done. Like it's just not being done, and you have to be okay with that, and you have to be okay with out of bounds play probably wasn't as crisp as you wanted it, which drives my assistants nuts. But pretty firm on that. I would rather have a 20-minute elite practice instead of a 75-minute average practice that got everything in. So sometimes I'll blow my whistle and shut it down just because I don't think there's any way we could get better than what we were just doing. And I kick them out, go home. You got better today, just get out. Um,
Yeah.
hey,
And you can tell that right away too. You can tell when a practice is dragging or things aren't being executed or crisp. And at least for me, if you're probably the same way. You can just kind of see it in players' eyes and their body language. They might be working hard, they might be trying, but it's just it's just not happening. It's just not today's not the day to be going full bore and you kind of shut it down.
yeah, we've had a few where you start looking for, I just need one positive to end on.
Hmm.
You don't even care what it is. So kid gets a deflection. Yeah, blow your whistle. Get out of here. All right, great job. But yeah, I think we run into that probably quite a bit. I think, I don't know what your high school kids are like out in Arizona, but I don't think ours attention span can even handle. I don't think a 2-hour practice, you know, you start hitting that, 100, 110-minute mark. You start seeing them start looking up at the clock and looking out, going, oh man. So I'd rather just go short and sweet and live with the consequences.
Yeah, no, no, it's the same here. I think, there's all this stuff that like you want to do, and I think, you and I are kind of in the same boat of, I was younger. Especially, I wanted to get everything in. I want to get everything done. I had all the stuff I wanted to do, and you just have to, I think, learn to let some things go. And like you said, maybe that baseline out of bounds play won't be as crisp as you want it to, but at least my players know, like, okay, these are the things though that we dedicate and hang our hat on, and these are the things that we're not gonna have lapses in whatsoever. And like you said, if you're playing 80-90% of the game out in transition opportunities or out where you're pressure, like, emphasize where most of the game is being played. And I think the percentages kind of bore out that, yeah, it's all right if we neglected something that, yeah, I would have liked to get to, but if it's only a small percentage of the game, it's probably better that we're focusing on all these other aspects that are going to be used a lot more.
Yeah, and I think going back, kind of spark something. Like if our guys aren't going 100%, if they're not being relentless in their effort, like it stands out. And so if one player isn't all in that practice, like other players see it and you stand out and it really, really like shocks almost the team. And they, like guys will start to say like, hey, 42, you're not doing your best. Like you're making us look bad. And so um, when we play this style, when we're playing this kind of high pressure, high paced basketball, when someone isn't willing to do it or someone is wearing down, it stands out so much that either A, the team will take care of it itself. They'll say, Coach, like we don't want this guy around. He's not doing what we want. Or it's like a really good, you go like, oh wow, we're worn out. Like that's one of our better guys and he's struggling to get up and down the court at his normal pace. Like we do need a break or we do need to shut it down or maybe just watch film today and lift weights and send him home.
Couple more questions, Coach. Here, you talked about film. What is the kind of the film process? What are the expectations when you're doing film with your guys? Everyone kind of does film maybe a little bit differently in terms of their expectations of whether players have watched it beforehand or if they're watching it one on one or watching as a team. What is your kind of film protocol, and what are you like working on or pointing out or having your guys hopefully learn from this defensively as they're watching film?
Yeah, that's one area that is a growth place for me as a coach. I was never, as a coach, I haven't been big on film early on, um, but players are interested in it and keep asking about it. So then I was like, all right. And so I went way hard the other way and we watched like 20 minutes of film. I was like, well, that was a waste. So we do short clips. If my assistant clips up, we try and aim more positive than negative, just because I think positive just sells better. If you show all the highlights, they like it more. If you show all the lowlights, they're a little not as happy and practice doesn't seem to go as well. And then we try and limit, hey, we're going to show 5 clips on our press, that we did really well in the game last week or in practice, man, that was really good practice. Let's show these 5 clips. And maybe there's like some average ones that like, hey, there's 2 average ones. Like, here's how we get better. Look how great these 3 were. Um, and then, as we start adding things into our offense, I tend to show clips, whether we steal it from, our transition offense I stole from an Australian coach. And so I show clips of their team like, hey, this is what we're looking for. Here's what we're working on today. Can you guys see it? Yep. Where would you stand at? Have the guys point it out. And then we started the end of in March. Um, we let the players, we said, hey, here's, we're playing team X. Hey, I need you to find me 5 clips that they're going to do to hurt us. 5 things they do to hurt us. Clip it up, have it ready for practice on Monday, and get another player. Hey, I need 5 clips, 5 things we can do to hurt them. Have 5 clips ready for us on Monday. And so we'd have the players show up and they would get their, we have a TV that we can roll onto the court. So we'll be on the court and they watch the clips. I think that's probably been the best. So I think we're really going to buy into that this year and have the guys kind of lead the film because I think they know what they need to know, right? If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
And so, our first time we did, our guard was like, "This is what we need to be really good at. This is how they're going to hurt us. Here's how we got to be better at it." And in my mind, I was like, I wasn't even worried about that, but they were, and so it was good that he brought it up and we worked on it, and it worked for us. So, um, that's probably where we'll aim.
So you brought up a really interesting point and something that I've heard other coaches talk about, and it's something that really stuck out with me, and it was about your film philosophy and the things that you show. And I had a coach who told me is like, essentially, to kind of summarize it really quickly, he brought up the fact that he would rather show more of what their players do well so that they're thinking about what to do well and what worked versus thinking about what not to do. He said it's a lot more important and a lot better for my players to be thinking about like what they've been doing well and to continue doing it rather than to put in their head what not to do because it makes them slower, makes them think too much, makes them hesitant. And I always thought that kind of stuck with me. So I really like you kind of mentioned about how you show, a lot of the things that your players do well because at one, it's more positive and players like that sort of thing. But I think it, reinforces to them too that okay, we are seeing success. We're spending all this time, on defense, and look how it is paying off for us because we're getting, X, Y, and Z out of it, and hopefully, keeps their excitement up there to play defense at a high rate.
Yeah, I think, if I'm honest with myself, when I was a high school player and they put in the stupid VHS tape in and they, have the times written out and they'd go like, hey, Eric, look at this. And they show you like that really crappy thing you did, like, it's the worst, and that's, why would I want a guy to feel that way going into a practice? I want him to be up and about and excited. And so, it's a
Yeah.
long season. It's a long 32 minutes is longer than you think in a high school game. And so you can always find something good, and I think they see enough of the bad. I think, with the way social media works, you know, that they get all the clips of, when they get crossed over. Or, we had a player get dunked on in a summer league game, but I was super excited because he went and contested a guy trying
Challenged
to
it.
dunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing, like kid wasn't thrilled about it, but for us, I was like, yo, that's a big step for you, man. Like that's a growth moment. That's a great thing. And I said, don't ever look at that clip as a negative. That's always a positive because you went. Most players will get out of the way. That's why you're special. So I 100% agree, and we'll continue to try and do that as we move forward in our program.
So I want to ask before we hit our concluding segment again, like most guests, I feel like sometimes I just scratch the surface on stuff, but you've brought this up a couple times, and I think this is a really interesting dynamic. And so I wanted to kind of pick your brain on this because I think other coaches might be going through similar situations or may have already gone or will go through it in the future. But you've talked about how some of the philosophies that you have when it comes to practice planning and the things that you emphasize maybe go against, some of the ideas or some of the things that the other coaches on your staff want to do. So, what is kind of that process of collaborating with your staff and taking their input and getting their ideas and being able to kind of incorporate their feedback while at the same time, obviously staying true to what you believe in and also, not like alienating them or not making them feel like their voice isn't heard? How do you kind of put all of that together to make sure that everybody on the coaching staff's bought in and everybody is bought into the vision that you've laid out?
Yeah. Well, the first time I brought this up, they all looked at me like I was an idiot, like I was crazy. They're like, why would you do this? And I'm like, hey, let's trust me, let's do it. And so, number one, you really be careful who you let in your circle. Fortunate, I have a really good coaching staff, who guys, even if I'm like, hey, we're going to do this, like I told them this summer, like, hey, we're going to figure out how to press off a missed shot. Like that, we're going to figure that out. And they're like, you cannot press off a missed shot. I'm like, why not? If we send all five guys to the glass, that's a whole argument we're in right now. Don't worry about it. So number one is being okay with confrontation, being okay with, maybe the conversation gets a little heated. And if you're okay with that confrontation, like it only is going to make you better, right? Because a couple of times where I'm like, hey, I want to press, here's how I'm going to do it. And a coach, one of my assistants kind of argued back. I didn't have a good answer. And so I wouldn't have been prepared to teach that press. And so when he said that, I was like, oh, you know what? That's a really good point. And so when I came back, I had those answers. And so once he saw that, like that's how bought in I was, he also was that bought in. And then giving them meaningful roles. That was when I was an assistant, I got meaningful roles. And so when I had that role, like I really got to take advantage of it, and it pushed me as a coach and made me a better head coach now. So give my guys space to talk, give them space to teach, and then I try and give them like summer homework. Like, hey, for example, I've said this now a couple times. Our out of bounds unders weren't great, and the argument back was, well, coach, you never gave us enough time to work on them and practice. And I said, okay, then find me simpler, cleaner, easier to teach out of bounds. Let's not get too fancy. I think we got too fancy. Come back to me in July with some out of bounds unders. And so one coach, that's his role, for the summer. And so I think giving them something instead of just saying like, hey, this is what you're teaching, having them bring it to you. Because in the end, I don't care as long as we get a bucket out of it. What do I care what you run? Uh,
Yeah.
and as long as it's simple and easy to teach. So I think that was probably the best thing we've done is we call them, my assistant brought this, it's not mine. He calls it a raincoat session. You got to put your raincoat on because you're going to get wet, but just let it roll off. And so we, have some serious conversations. We do it with our teams. We'll have a raincoat session where, hey, I'll say, what do you guys need? And they might say, like, coach, man, like, you're being too much of a jerk. You need to back off me. All right, thank you, man. I'm glad you said that to me. Or it might be assistant like, hey, man, you need to be better communicating with us instead of texting me at, 2 o'clock in the morning because that's when you're thinking of it. You know, call me at a normal, reasonable hour. Like, okay, thank you. So, having raincoat sessions and having guys that you're okay disagreeing with, I think are two really, really big things to have.
And what it sounds like too, and which is really cool to hear, is even though there's going to be those disagreements and there's going to be things that you're going to have some spirited discussions on. I can tell just by the way that you talk about your staff and with yourself, obviously, that it's all focused on what's going to be best for the players and what's going to be best for the team. And I feel like you're going to get always positive results when all of the conversation is focused on we should be doing, or I think we should do X, Y, and Z because I think this is going to be what's in the best interest for the team. And everybody's kind of working on that common goal. I think you could have real spirited conversations, but everybody knows that everybody's intentions and heart is in the right place.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's, in the end, that's what we want. We're high school coaches, so like we're trying to prepare guys for life. We're trying to get guys not only better on the court, but better for college, better for, when they get married one day or go into jobs. And so we got to set a great example. And as you know, like life is not easy going. There's adversity out there. So finding a group of guys that you can be in the fire with and come out the other side stronger for it, I think is important.
Coach, to wrap up, there's a couple questions that I ask every guest, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into this first one, which is thinking back on your coaching career, what is a specific moment from your coaching career that you think by sharing our listeners would be able to learn from?
Well, geez, that's a whole nother podcast. But one that really stands out, one that I think about often. Uh, my best player and I both started the same time, so kind of gives it away. But I was a head coach. He was a freshman. We had a game. Playing team was probably better than us, but we were in the mix, and we called timeout. I think we were down 5 or 6 points, and I said, I'm big on. I let my players voice opinions in timeouts, and he goes, I want to run a play, and it was a play we hadn't really worked on, and we go out and I put something else in and he just pulled a deep shot and not what we wanted. It was a bad play. I was angry. We ended up losing. We lost by, I think, 13 or something like that. Was pretty angry about the loss. And so against my better judgment, I let my emotions kind of get out of control in the locker room. Not bad, but I lit into my team. And I think I said something like, hey, man, if either you got to buy in or you got to get out and like you can go. And I voiced it to everyone, but my best player took it that I was going at him.
Mm,
And I didn't, I like from now, like literally anytime I have even if it's a positive conversation, I circle back to the player before they leave to make sure they heard the right thing. And so he left thinking that I was like really angry with him and that there was this really big problem. And so I left like, you know what, like, Monday, I'm gonna tell the guys, apologize for letting my emotions get the better of me, but they were a better team. We probably shouldn't have won anyways. So I don't know why I was so hurt. Um, and so I show up Monday, and it's a bigger deal. The parents are upset with me. The AD's like, "Hey, what went on?" And so it's a bigger problem. So, you know, a have I don't really say too much after games, whether it's a win or a loss, and then allow myself to cool down before we talk about anything. And then B, make sure like we always, we have a standard in our team. the players have to come see the coach, whether it's a game, practice, or it's a kiddie camp. They have to come see the coach before they leave. They have to come see me, give me a fist bump, and that's where I double check, make sure the messages were received, or if there's any questions, and make sure everyone's okay. So, that just made life a little difficult for about a week. And then, hey, we learn from it, move forward. But, it's one of those things, if you can avoid, I highly recommend avoiding.
I've learned to piggyback off this that especially after losses, there's very little that is going to get done talking to your team after a game. I think after a game, players are already mentally elsewhere, and if it's a win, they're probably excited about the win, and they're kind of moved on to whatever else they're thinking about. If it's a loss, and most teams are pretty upset and already frustrated as it is. I feel like coaches are frustrated, upset, like at least for me, and this took me a while to learn. Like, don't say a lot after games because nobody's probably listening one way or the other. And if your emotions aren't in check either, those thoughts and things that you let out might be things that you regret later on or the next day. So I co-sign that. I feel like short and sweet and get them out of there, right?
Yeah. And look, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. Uh, I've fallen short a few times, but I've gotten better. Right. I think I maybe talked for like 45 seconds now, maybe a minute. Um, yeah, I nothing positive. I don't recall any major wins after a win or a loss in a locker room
Yeah.
post game talk.
Yeah, yeah. It's maybe in movies those things sort of happen, but not
Yeah,
not here
yeah.
not here in reality for sure. Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest what I like to call a 60-second soapbox. You can go over 60 seconds though. I just like to put titles to things, but I want to use this kind of for you, Coach, to get out a final thought, a closing message, a final idea, something that you want to leave the listeners with. You can take it any direction you want, basketball wise or coaching wise, because it's your soapbox after all. So without further ado, Coach, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor and let you take it from here.
I was going to go a different way with this question, but you brought it up, I think, before we started. We were talking. Indiana doesn't have a shot clock in high school, and it drives me insane. I think it's hurting the development of the game. I think it hurts the development of our players, and I think it hurts the development of coaches. I think you got to be a better coach playing under a shot clock. It really bothers me. Indiana's dragging their feet. I'm sure we'll be the one of the last states to do it. Um, but I think it's a must in high school. And I'm a little psychotic. I would go straight to a 24-second shot clock in high school. Um, they did it when I was overseas, and we see the caliber of players coming from Europe and other places. If they can do that under a shot clock, why can't we? So if there's any people listening that are important, high up in the Indiana world of basketball, do us all a favor, put a shot clock in. It's only going to make our game better. And I don't think I need 60 seconds to complain about that.
I will say positively, I'm just very happy we in Arizona have one. There are things that I have my complaints, and people who know me know I have my own frustrations at our state association. But at the very least, at least we got the shot clock going a couple years ago. And man, like you said, it makes such a difference not only to players but to coaches just to have that element that you have to be aware of and considerate about. And as you've mentioned, right? You got players that are going to be playing out in the next level, in the collegiate level. And I think just what a disservice it is to have players who may never have exposure or experience to that to have to get that first experience, at the collegiate level when there's so much other stuff that they got to prepare for and get ready for to be in college and playing at that level. I think having to be concerned or think about or even have to learn, the nuances about a shot clock, it's something they should not have to be experiencing for the first time at that high of a level.
Agree. What's the shot clock in Arizona?
We're at 35, so we're not at 24. And truth be told, even at 35, it's not something that really comes up a whole lot. But the players see it and you notice it, and there's going to be those situations, right, where you're playing good enough, defense, and all of a sudden it's you get a shot clock violation, or you need to get into something because you only got 8 or 9 seconds left. So I think it does just enough. I think I'd be great with 24. I think 24 we could definitely make that work and manage. But even just having 35 makes me just have to think a little bit more as a coach sometimes about situations. And if it makes me a better coach, then it makes my players better. Then we should just have it.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more.
Coach, again, we could probably spend a few more hours talking about defense and so much other stuff, but I'm glad we were able to get some ideas and some thoughts and for you to share out just some of the ways that you're able to cause havoc on defense. So again, Coach, I know you're really busy, got a lot of things going on, but really appreciate you coming on, talking about practices, talk about defensive philosophy, pressure, transition, all the other things that we got into as well. So I know you've had a couple great seasons that you're on the heels of, so wish you nothing but continued success. Looking forward to continuing to follow your journey at St. Joe's. And again, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. And if you ever master the press out in transition on defense, make sure to let me know because I think everybody's going to want to know that too.
Will do. I appreciate your time and effort, and always a pleasure to talk hoops.
Thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.